So here's a question. What do you do when you're angry with someone else or with God? We're going to think about that today on Now at Devotions from Trinity Lutheran here in Cyrus. Here in my office. Let me tell you, the wide breadth of conversations, of stories I have heard, of family issues that have been counseled, or tough things that people have shared with me that we have tried to work on, or hard questions, or just secrets exposed, like the number of things that have occurred here. When I'm in my office, I'm reminded just how powerful and how easy anger can be, and how destructive. In our Bible verse, and for the Bible verse I'm going to be preaching on this Sunday, we're in two stories this Sunday that I'm going to work with. We've got first from the story of Jonah. Jonah goes out to Nineveh, and God forgives. But then also we're dealing a little bit with the book of Mark, in which Jesus calls the disciples, or excuse me, John. And he says to Andrew and Peter, the Zebedee's boys, he says, "Come and follow me." And they do. So we're thinking about that. But I wanted to start with Jonah is angry with God. And he starts off that way. And he starts off angry and says, I ain't doing this because God, I know you. You're a forgiver. Now, I would remind you, the story of Jonah is a satire. It's actually a funny story. It's a humor story. But it illustrates a lot about us and our relationship with God. So Jonah says, nope, I'm not going to do it. Well, he eventually gets turned around and goes there, as you know the story. Gets swallowed by a fish. Actually, the word in Hebrew is very similar to the word for goldfish, one of my colleagues told me. So it's a tiny little fish, swallows him up and sticks him in. But anyway, he gets there to Nineveh, and he just walks part of the way into town for a day and just tells the people, God's gonna do some judgment, so you better watch out. Well, they take him seriously, and everybody dresses up in burlap, even the animals, another joke in the story, and they all ask God forgiveness, and God forgives. And Jonah goes, ugh, I knew it. When I think about what happens in people's lives when forgiveness isn't an option, or when they can't make it an option, when they can't see a way where they could release what they have held on to for so long, their anger or their righteousness, whatever it is that makes them feel like they deserve better, which I'm sure, of course, they did. But when it can't be released, it becomes this knot in a family system. It becomes this knot in a person's heart and life, around which it's, I think, pretty hard for God to get a lot done. Now, God is one who's in the process of healing people. God is one who brings forgiveness. God is one who, I just got to say, is always interested in redeeming. But we have a say in that too. And this power of anger is one that is hard to overstate sometimes. And it's not that anger isn't something we should have. It's a perfectly healthy and normal emotion. But anger that turns into grudge that is held, or rage that is fed and continues to go, that's different. There's a reason that forgiveness is a huge part of what we talk about in the church. My office can be pretty quiet some days. And some days that's a relief. But some days memories come up, and I think about how things have unfolded for the folks that I care about and talk with and work with. And when forgiveness is a part of the equation, when a person decides to release, or decides, when a person allows forgiveness to occur, a lot of times I'll see some pretty good trajectories. That doesn't mean you forget. You forgive. It doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean you continue to allow something to happen in your life. Jesus calls these men to follow him. Jonah says to God, I knew you were going to be slow to anger, steadfast, and abounding love. I knew you were going to forgive. That's why I didn't want to go. And Jesus says to these men, follow, and they do. There's something in between those two that I think is fascinating, and I think we should be thinking about. I don't get raging mad at winter. It's a force of nature. I get frustrated with it. I get tired with it. I don't get angry at it. Sin is kind of like that. How do we remember that even when everyone has the best of intentions, that people are broken and hurt happens and people do terrible things? How do we remember that? Not allow for it, try to fight it, try to stay against it, but at the same time, learn to forgive, that we might be free of that which would chain us to our anger. It's not easy. It's not simple. If it were, we would all figure it out. Anyway, I'm Pastor Chris from Trinity and Cyrus, thinking about anger and forgiveness this week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.